welcome everyone to our webinar. Sorry for getting started a little late. So my name is Michaela. We also have Jessa here with us. She's one of our Gent Counselor Life coaches that does our services with us as well. So she will be manning the chat through the course of the webinar. So if anyone has any questions, like in the moment, feel free to put them in the chat box as we go, and Jessa will take care of them if she can. If there are any questions at the end, which we will have time for, then she'll go ahead and take over and voice those questions from the chat for me to answer. So that's kind of the plan at the moment, okay? So first of all, as we get started here, I know this is a fresh wound, okay? Match day was only 5 days ago. And so at this point, a lot of the emotions that come with not matching are probably still very much at the forefront. And at this point, there can be extreme disappointment. Some people have experienced low self-esteem, confusion, self-doubt, maybe fear for the future, and a lot of other kind of negative emotions. But whatever you're feeling at this point is totally valid, okay? This very painful process that you're going through will eventually end, right? You'll move out of that. And if you choose, there are ways to turn this really uncomfortable experience into something valuable for you as a person, as an applicant, and in the future as a genetic counselor, okay? And so that's what we're going to try to do today, is help lay out a pathway to move forward and kind of clarify what we can do now, what next steps to take. But the main takeaway for today is that no immediate action is required, okay? We're going to talk about plenty of things to do, but today is not the time to do them, okay? The reason we're having this webinar now instead of in a month from now is because some of you are in just a place where really critical decisions about the future need to be made about trying again or moving on to a different career path. So I wanted to make sure that you guys have all the tools and information available to you now, so that as you ponder that decision, you just have everything you need when you're ready to make it, okay? So for today, just get what you can from the webinar, and this, again, the recording of this is going to be posted to the GC Prep website, hopefully by tomorrow evening, depends on the captions. And that'll be available for free, so you can rewatch it at a better time and when you're in a better mental space as well, okay? So just some disclosures here. First, I'm the founder and co-owner of GC Prep LLC, which is a for-profit company, okay? I will let you know, though, that we are trying to open up a charitable branch of the business, like a 501c organization. And the purpose of that is so that we can start taking grants and donations to make these services extremely reduced or free to people of underrepresented groups that are trying to apply, because that is one of the goals of GC Prep, is to make sure that our services are not encouraging disparities in the genetic counseling field, because there are plenty already. So we don't want to add to that, okay? As part of that goal, we have made the educational videos on our website available for free to people of underrepresented groups, and there is a demographic survey that has been available for people to fill out over the course of this last year. And I just wanted to share a little bit with you guys about that process, okay? So 100% of people who completed the survey were offered some degree of discount. About 78% of those did qualify for free video access because they were from an underrepresented group, whether that was racial, sexual orientation or identity, or a low socioeconomic demographic. The remaining 21.5% did not technically meet criteria, but they were offered either partial access or discount codes. And so we'll talk a little bit more at the end about GC Prep services. And so if there is a significant financial need for you, at this point, we can't make it free. That the company's just not in a place to be able to do that, but we can talk and see if there's a way to reduce that for people who do have a significant financial need there, just as we wait for this 501c status to get up and running, because it will take quite a while. It can take up to a year to get that all going. Okay. So what we'll be doing today, we're going to cover a couple points, what it means to not match, why didn't I match, what should I do now, where do I go to get help, and then is GC Preps coaching effective? But we'll just jump right in here. Okay. So there are many, many reasons why someone would not match, even highly qualified applicants. And so this year, this is from the National Match website for 2022. So 2,067 people applied. 1,065 of those participated in the match, meaning they had interviews and had schools to put in their ranking. And of those people, about 547 did actually match. So 547 out of the 2,067 is 26.5% of applicants were successful. Okay. That also means that 74% of people who applied did not match. And there are tons of great future counselors in that number. There's probably future counselors who are attending this meeting. Okay. So what we should understand from these numbers is really two things. Okay. First, you are not alone in this. Okay. So it's really easy to feel isolated when we get devastating news, and your patients will feel that way in the future. But the reality is you're not going through this by yourself. So if you need to commiserate with someone, find other applicants and connect with them. And if you don't have a place to do that, then you're welcome to email us at GC Prep, and we can try to connect applicants who want to chat with each other and kind of work together through this process. Okay. The next thing is considering what it means not to match. What it means is that you will not be starting a GC Master's program in the fall, of course, but that is the scope of what it means, okay? It does not mean that you're a failure. It does not mean that you didn't try hard enough. It does not mean that you will never become a genetic counselor or that you don't have what it takes to become a genetic counselor. And it does not mean that you should give up, okay? Those are not takeaways that you should be applying to not matching here, okay? This is an opportunity for feedback. You know, it's not a declaration of a future that will never be, okay? Again, there are tons and tons of current students and working GCs who did not match their first or second or even third time, okay? So while this feels really bad, we need to draw a mental line with these feelings, because a rejection from a graduate program at this point, we do not want to take that as a devaluation of yourself personally or of your abilities or of your potential. Okay. It is really easy to go to that dark place when we receive this type of rejection, but do your best now to protect your mental health and view this result as a setback and a feedback opportunity rather than a judgment on you as a person. Okay. So as we move forward, we're going to talk about reasons why people don't match. Again, there are a lot, and we'll just go over kind of the three big ones. And so as we talk about this, just kind of ask yourself, which category do I think I fit in? We'll talk about some hard feedback later, but what do you consider to be the weakness, or what do you think happened that you didn't match? So you can reflect on that as we talk about it. Okay. So first of all, first reason is you need more competitive experiences. Okay. First and foremost up there are some grades. Okay. So let's look at some graphs from the National Match Service. Okay. You don't have to look deeply at these graphs. Okay. They're not to memorize or anything. But the red line is those students who matched, and the blue line is those who were unmatched. And you can see both in GPA and in GRE scores, those with higher scores were more likely to match. There's just a higher average. But even there, that blue line for GPA right here is 3.46, which is not shabby. Okay, that's a smart person GPA. So even those of you who are really accomplished in school, and have a good GPA, overall, when compared to just the competition in this genetic counseling matching process, you know, it's very steep. Okay, so for some of you, um, you may want to consider retaking some courses if they're bringing your GPA down, especially the prerequisites, just so that we can either increase that number or that so you have a more recent class to show with some high scores. Okay. If you took the GRE but did not do particularly well at it, again, that's totally fine. There's a bunch of research that shows it doesn't necessarily correlate with any measurable value of a person after they do school. But if you took it and scored low, then you may want to, in the future, consider applying to programs that don't require this metric so that it's not potentially counting against you. Again, it's not a metric that has significantly contributed to the value of the application process, and that's what schools are figuring out at this point. But some schools are more progressive than others in letting that metric go. And so that's something that you can use to your advantage as you pick schools to apply to next time if you so choose. Okay. Other reasons or other more competitive experiences, just more exposure to genetic counseling, whether it's shadowing, interviewing, listening to podcasts, anything, just keep collecting those experiences. Some people do need more crisis work and getting more meaningful takeaways out of that crisis work. Okay. We want to make sure that even if you've had plenty in your CV this year, like if you look at this and you're like, I'm good, my CV was awesome, my grades are great, I had plenty of GC exposure and crisis work. That's great, but it doesn't mean that you stop building on that now. Okay, we don't want to get to the winter when you've submitted your applications and those program directors look at the CV and be like, well, why did she stop accumulating experiences in, the spring of last year? Okay, we want to keep building on that to show that we're still dedicated. Okay. Other reasons. Everything was great on paper, but those interviewing skills need work. Okay. Interviewing for grad school is very different than interviewing for a job, and it can be really difficult to know what programs are looking for. And there are tons of people who look excellent on paper, but they just struggle to be compelling or memorable in person. And it could be that there's a lack of confidence. Sometimes people are unable to articulate what genetic counseling actually is. Some people have a hard time being insightful and like deeply analyzing the experiences they've had in their crisis work. Okay. And let's take just a minute to talk about the middle one, the unable to articulate what genetic counseling is. This is actually pretty common, and programs are especially wary of this when the applicant is a genetic counseling assistant or a GCA. Okay. And I think it's because the expectation from a program is that a GCA is really going to know what genetic counseling is and what the value of it is because you're working closely with those genetic counselors. And there should have been ample opportunities to observe the process and really mull it over. So if in an interview, a genetic counseling assistant can't be insightful about the process or be specific about the value of genetic counseling, that is of concern to a program. Janelle, who is my co-owner of GC Prep, she's an assistant program director, and she did have multiple candidates who were GCAs who, when asked about their role and what it was like as a GCA, they said something like, yeah, so I took patient phone calls and I got the chart ready beforehand, and sometimes I sat in with the counselor, and it was such a great experience and I really learned a lot. And that was the entirety of their answer, which is just not sufficient. Okay. There was no demonstration of understanding or counseling skills. So it's best to replace that last part, that I really learned a lot, with something like, I was really able to see the genetic counseling up close. And in this one case, the patient did XYZ, which was really surprising to me. And the counselor handled it by doing ABC, and that taught me DEF. Okay. That's a much more robust answer that shows significant understanding, more than kind of a generic answer. And so for those of you who are GCAs, that can be a pitfall for that subgroup of applicants. So just be aware that if you apply again, we just want to make sure that we don't assume at all that the program knows that you know what genetic counseling is. Okay. Also, there are some of you out there that just have more shy personalities, and that is totally fine. Okay, but we do need to help you come out of your shell just a little bit to make a memorable impression during interviews. There needs to be some warmth exchanged during the interview, and we need to show trustworthiness in an interview because that's what you're going to show to your patients. So building confidence in yourself and your abilities long before interview season can be really important to your success. Okay? The next reason does not apply to everyone, but it certainly applies to some, okay? And that's that some people may not be truly passionate about genetic counseling. Okay? The reality is that not everyone who applies or who reapplies will become a genetic counselor. There just aren't enough program seats. And some people who apply have genetic counseling as like an option for their future and they're interested in it, but they're not like ride or die on it. So you can imagine if you're a program director and you see two candidates back to back and one of them is like, yeah, this seems like a good field for me. I'm really interested in it. And then the next person is like, I have to do this. There's no other option. I will explode if I don't become a genetic counselor. Like they're very different mindsets, and it can be picked up in a session, even if we don't say it that specifically. Okay. So for each of you, at this point, you'll need to ask yourself what you really want from your future. Most of you are probably here because you are GC ride or die, which is good if we're moving forward. Okay. But there are tons of applicants who will need to decide, is this for sure 1,000% where I'm meant to be? Because there are many science and genetic related fields, psychology related fields that could be a great fit aside from genetic counseling. And so if you're not super, super, super sold, it has to be genetic counseling. If there's still options open in your mind to something else, it could be in your best interest to just research those and explore those more in the next few months, just to either solidify that yes, GC is truly what you want to do, or that something else might be something you're more passionate about. Okay. And again, if you decide that genetic counseling is not for you, that is not a failure. Okay. That is a very mature decision made at the best possible time, i.e. now rather than when you've spent thousands of dollars in a program or when you're working to discover that it's not the right fit. Okay. Those of you though who, once you process this mental shock of not matching, will really double down on becoming a GC, and there's no other option, right, for you. And you're willing to do whatever it takes for how long it takes to get there. And that passion has to be real. The dedication needs to be focused and directed. And every drop of your determination needs to go into applying again, because reapplication is even a greater slog than the first time because of all the mental baggage that you're bringing with you from not matching. So only those who are really, truly dedicated to being a genetic counselor should attempt the matching process. Okay, another time. This decision, no one can make it for you to try again or to move on. It's a really deeply personal choice, and it's one that you'll probably have to make with your gut over logic. I mean, there's probably some logic in it, but in reality, your gut is probably going to have a lot to do with that. So don't rush that decision. And if you're on the fence, look more into those other fields that you might be considering and this field. And our first module that we have of educational videos with GC Prep is actually really good at helping people decide if it's right for them. There's a lot of in-depth information on the field. So you can review that and decide yes or no. Also, keep in mind that giving up is something that we do when we're in a very dark mental place. Okay. So I don't want anyone to give up at this point. Giving up when in a dark spot can lead to regret in the future. Um, but there are some of you that when this dark time passes, you'll look critically at the field and at yourself and realize it might not be your dream, or that the desire to reach this goal might not be equal to the amount of work it takes to get there. And if that's the case, that's not giving up. Again, it's just making a mature decision. So we just want to make sure that you're in a good and healthy mental place when that decision is being made. Okay. Realistically, most people have one or two of these reasons that are contributing to the reason why they don't match. But we can address all of this, and we'll talk about how to do that. Okay. So what do I do now? First, again, just mental self-care. Okay, do whatever you need to do to regain your mental fortitude. So if that's taking some days off work, do it. If you need some therapy, that's fine. If you need a massage, yes. Okay, go get your favorite toy that you've been working on, or the sunglasses that you've been wanting for a while, or that thing you haven't bought but you want to. Just do whatever it takes to be gentle with yourself, because you're not going to be able to move forward with any purpose or direction if you're not able to recenter yourself before trying to move. Okay. Next, of course, is decide if you're reapplying. And again, that can take as long as it takes, but don't make that decision in a state of distress. For those who do apply or do decide to apply again, the rest of this webinar is for you, right? So if you think about this and you decide, you know what, GC is not for me, we do wish you the best on finding what your passion is and being successful in finding another field. But if GC really is the only thing for you, that's what we're talking about from here on out, okay? You can ask programs where you applied for feedback, even if you didn't get an interview there. So questions like, where was my application lacking? You know, what were the concerns? What can I do to resolve any issues? Can be really helpful for you to get feedback, but we don't do this right now. Don't send those emails now, okay? Right now, the program directors are working on contacting their next year students, but they're also trying to help current students finish up their thesis and capstone projects and graduate. So they're probably not going to have time to answer your emails right now. So realistically, the end of May, early June is the best time to send those. But you can't expect to hear back from all of them, unfortunately. Okay, so hopefully some schools will reply, some schools will not, but you're most likely to get an answer if you wait to send that recontact email towards the end of May or early June. Okay. Some of the feedback that might come up here could be, you know, regarding retaking classes, considering additional coursework, anything, or just getting more experiences like we discussed. Personally, when it comes to grades, I'd recommend retaking anything that was below a B if it's a prerequisite. And ideally, I'd like to see each of you get an A- or better in genetics, because that's really going to show that there's the mental acuity there to succeed in grad school. And it's going to be something specific that you can point to on your application. Okay. Other times people get feedback that they were just kind of stiff or awkward in the interview, or that the interviewers just couldn't read you very well, or that there was an issue with confidence. And a lot of that can be really hard to hear. It can add another sting, you know, when we get that information. But we can take it and have it be helpful to us because it gives us somewhere to point our energy. Okay. So not very fun to hear criticism, but I do encourage you to reach out to those programs and get that feedback so that you know where your efforts would be of highest yield. Okay. Next is to beef up your CV experiences. Okay, continue to do that crisis work. Consider finding a different type that is more meaningful to you if you need to, and kind of supports your goal as a genetic counselor. Okay, so continue to reach out to genetic counselors, ask for shadowing and interview opportunities, continue to watch the webinar, listen to podcasts, attend classes, read articles, basically anything to gain exposure and understanding of the field. And finally, building your confidence. Okay, this one is especially hard, um, but confidence is extremely important part of being a successful applicant. And it's not being arrogant, it's not being aloof, but a solid confidence in your value as a human and as your value as a future training counselor um, is going to be essential. So we'll talk about some ways that you can build your confidence towards the end of the webinar. Okay. So as we move on, let's talk about these more meaningful experiences. Okay. So again, don't stop seeking experiences. Keep going. Again, even if it was already great and you had a bunch of stuff, keep adding to it. Again, we don't want to give the programs any reason to doubt our dedication because there's a gap. So keep doing what you can do. There's no saturation point of how much is enough, how much is too much. And I know you guys have been working and pushing really hard, and it's just going to continue, unfortunately. So take a deep breath, recenter yourself and keep going on that one. Okay. You may also want to consider getting help analyzing your thoughts and feelings during your crisis counseling experiences. Okay. So we want to make sure that as you do your crisis work, you're really getting something out of it. Like your physical attendance is not what's important there. Okay. So applicants often complete their crisis work and they know it was good, but they can either have a hard time breaking down the value of a situation or just have a hard time explaining, communicating in an interview why a particular experience was so valuable or challenging or made them grow. And so having a coach or a mentor listen to your experience and help you interpret that in the a genetic counselor lens can be really helpful to you kind of in real time as you go through that so that you have kind of a bank of experiences that you can pull from as you write your statements in the fall. Okay. GC Prep has a whole video about how to get the most out of your crisis and shadowing work. So we talk about things to consider, how to analyze those situations, how to describe them in your interview, and it can really be a great place to start with that guidance as you move forward. And that can be a really great foundation and move you past like basic understanding so that when you do meet with a mentor or a coach, you'll have this knowledge base that then you can start growing on top of that and have higher yields information and coaching come out of those sessions. And finally, let's consider switching to a type of crisis work that more reflects your interests and passions. So if you're interested in pediatric genetics, maybe look for a crisis experience where you can work with children. If you're interested in prenatal, maybe look for opportunities to work with pregnant women. Or if you're interested in neurology, working at a dementia center or a senior center could be valuable. And autism resource place. Like there's a lot of options that you can choose. Okay, you don't have to switch. Okay, if you're in a doing crisis work that you like and you're relating to it and it's been helpful to you, then you don't need to switch. But if you feel like it's just lacking or you're not connecting to it, then consider moving to something else because it does give you this opportunity to move away from just the basic and set yourself apart as far as your intentions when you're applying. And it's definitely something that you can use in your statement and in your interviews. It just shows that you have a more specific goal in mind beyond like, I want to be a GC. Yes, that's why we're all applying. But what beyond that? What else do we want to do specifically? Okay. So let's talk about where to get some help. Okay. This slide has just a couple of non-GC prep options. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. There are many, many, many resources out there. These are just a couple that you can consider. Okay. The main takeaway here is just get as much help as you can. There is no shame in asking for help, and you're going to have to do it a lot as a student anyway and in your career. So just start getting practice at it and asking for help. When it comes to interviewing skills, Toastmasters can be really helpful. So Janelle, again, she's the assistant program director at Sarah Lawrence, my um, co-owner here. She's had multiple reapplicants who it was like night and day. Their first and second application process was extremely different as far as their confidence goes and their ability to explain themselves and their presence in the room. And what they had done was attend Toastmasters in their area. So that's something you can consider. For grades, um, online courses, of course, through well-known universities, right? Also, Stanford does have a professional development certificate in genetics and genomics. Um, it's got 6 or so classes that are somewhat similar to the type of class that you'd be seeing in grad school and on topics in genetics. And so this can be a good option for those who've been out of school for a while or whose GPAs are being pulled down by some classes that were long ago. Just to show, like, look, I can handle the coursework. I passed this certificate. So that's something that you can consider if there is a GPA issue. Okay. For those who need just more exposures, there's a GC career fair held by the Western States Regional Genetic Network. Most schools have open houses that are virtual. There's NSGC events, DNA Today podcast, the GC chat hashtag on social media, and many, many, many others. Okay, again, there's no such thing as too much here. And there are, of course, other resources and sites that have more exhaustive lists than this that you should look into. Okay. And then for confidence, if you're not in therapy or in life coaching, you can consider that. That's a great way to get real-time feedback and talk about some things that could be holding you back as far as confidence goes. If life coaching is what you're looking into, GC Prep has 2 of our coaches are certified life coaches as well as being genetic counselors. And so they would know kind of best of everyone how to help you with the life coaching part specifically for the GC application process. Okay. So moving on to where GC Prep can help you. Okay. We have book clubs. There's 6 or 7 a year hosted by one of our genetic counselors, and others are hosted by Janice, who's a program director. Attending book club is a great way to hone your skills discussing patient experiences and putting yourself in the mindset of people that you're hoping to help as a genetic counselor. So even if you don't have time to read the whole book or even any of it, like, the discussion can still be valuable and you're welcome to join. Okay, so those are available to register through the website. Okay. We also have webinars like this one. Again, they're free. They're 4 times a year, depending, and the topic depends on the time. So this one's about not matching. We had one in February about interview prep. There'll be one in the fall to orient people to school selection and applying, and then there's going to be one in the winter about writing the statements of purpose. Okay. The next resource here is the program map. So this is a free interactive map of all the schools in North America, and I'm very proud of it. This is the first, and to my knowledge, only interactive program map for these counseling programs, and it's dynamic. So you can set criteria such as cost, region, program size, the rotation type, and a lot of other filters. So you can find schools that you're interested in. And the goal of this map is to draw attention to programs that you may not have otherwise considered. Before this existed, it was really just that list of schools that was organized by state. So your first criteria kind of had to be location, and then you would manually go dig into all these metrics of the schools that you were interested in based on location, which is a ridiculous way to do it. So that's why we made this map here. The map is free, and we want to keep it that way. But I highly recommend using this tool coupled with our video on how to select schools, just to know what to think about and to know about things to consider when you're trying to select those places. Okay. And just before we move on here, this is another graph from the National Match Service. Again, the red is applicants that matched and the blue is applicants that didn't. You'll see the applicants that matched interviewed, or at least they ranked between 6 and 7 schools each. So that means they interviewed at least that many, if not more, because they might not have wanted to rank um, one or more of those. Okay. People who didn't match typically interviewed between 3 to 4 places. Um, we don't know exactly why this is. If it's that people who matched had a higher chance because they applied to more schools, or if it's because the people who didn't match, um, their application did not catch as much attention, so they didn't get as many interview invites. So we don't know the full reason behind these numbers, but the main takeaway of this is apply to lots, right? Lots of programs can help you get up these numbers where people who are matching um, are hanging out. Okay. So the program map, again, can help you find places up front that are a good fit logistically for you and your understanding of yourself before you spend money on applying. More resources. So the educational videos are available in monthly subscriptions. And these videos are meant to help you make a choice about GC that is that it's clear and the right one for you. Okay. Again, there are a lot of people who have a hard time describing what genetic counseling is in their interviews, so we don't want to be in that place. Um, there are 3 modules or 3 kind of sections of these videos. The first is, discussing what is genetic counseling, what's going on in the field, what are our strengths and our flaws. We dive into a lot of the specialties, and we talk about things that you should consider about yourself to make sure that you're compatible with the field. Okay. Second is a group of videos dedicated to help with application. So these are videos on putting together your CV and writing your statement and getting the most of your crisis work, picking schools. There's no substitute for one-on-one help, like face-to-face, because that can just be really high yield. But the modules are designed to help you get all the basic information and get you into like medium level advanced information on your own, so that when you get to the one-on-one coaching, it can be really high yield and you don't have to spend the time that you're paying for on basic things that can be covered in a video. You can start at a high level and just kind of go up from there. Okay. The third module of these videos is just counselor interviews. There are 11 of them so far. They're all about an hour long. And so you can watch them, especially if you haven't been able to shadow or interview a bunch of people, but you can take notes on your impressions and what we talked about in those interviews. And if you are able to find counselors to interview yourself, you can get an idea of some really good or better interview questions to ask those counselors, so you get more in-depth discussion with them and more detailed conversations that can be helpful. Okay. Both Janice, a program director, and Janelle, an assistant program director, have interviews in that group, and we talk about what makes a successful candidate and what they're looking for. So I found that really exciting and helpful when we were doing that interview. Okay. Again, these videos are billed monthly, but remember, those who are underrepresented group based on race, income, or certain LGBTQIA+ identities may qualify for free access. And so there's a demographic survey on the website under the financial aid tab that you can complete if you think you may qualify. Okay. We also have small groups. Okay. These group sessions have 6 applicants with a GC coach that's there facilitating. Okay. Therefore, there's 2 types of these small groups. There's some for applicants, of course, but we also have some for current students and new GCs. And typically in these small groups, we're discussing things that you should be thinking about around that time. So how to tweak your CV, how to tailor your statement, your interviewing skills in the spring, that type of thing. Because they're a small group, you still have some one-on-one time to get individual feedback, but you also hear some specific feedback for other people, which can be helpful. And these small groups are hosted by Jessa and Jessica, who again are both genetic counselors and life coaches. And so we've had multiple people who have done these small groups and found them beneficial because they were very cost effective, so they allowed them to get more services rather than the cost of doing one individualized session. Okay. Finally, we have coaching and mentoring services. Okay, so this is really where you're getting specific details. Ooh, someone unmuted. Okay, where you're getting specific details about you and your application and your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so we have one-time sessions like one mock interview, one document review. We have those things in like the premium version, which is with Janice, a program director. And those are really good for people who feel good about what they have. They just want to double check and get some notes. Okay. For people who know they need a little bit more help, a focused limited series of coaching can be very helpful. So this is like 3 to 6 sessions, all focused on one topic, like all on just mock interview prep or all on document reviews for the different schools. And these limited series can really help people work out their growth, and it gives them time to see changes in their confidence and in their ability to answer questions. You know, personally, I saw a ton of growth with some of our applicants from the first time I spoke with them to at the end of their limited series. They were completely different. Okay, and it has been really effective for those individuals. Okay, so the next limited series would be in the fall, specifically for document review, and then next winter, spring, it'll be for interview prep. Finally, there is extended mentorship, okay, like longer term agreements. Our coaches have 1, 3, and 6 month packages where they'd meet with an applicant weekly and support them by Slack and email in between. And what you talk about is totally up to you. So for example, someone in this webinar may be like, yes, I know I want to reapply, but my confidence is really broken. I'm not sure what to do better. And so mentorship can be a really good solution to help you come up with a specific plan for your own growth, to help you understand your personal strengths and weaknesses, to build confidence. Because again, our coaches are also life coaches, certified life coaches. And just to talk about all the things that you would do in these other services. So you can do document review, you can do mock interviews, you can do whatever you need to do in those sessions. Okay. All of our coaches do offer a free first session to make sure that the relationship will be compatible and it's a healthy one. And so it can really be beneficial just knowing someone's on your side and has your back as you go through this whole process again. Okay. If you did want to consider a longer term mentorship like this, there is like a free mentorship orientation session that you can schedule through our website, and you'd meet with me for half an hour and we discuss what you need. We'll talk about the coaches and I'll give you some information on their bios and their fee schedules. And if you decide to proceed, then I can connect you with a coach for that first free session. Okay. So the big question here is, does this all work, right? There are a lot of services. We've tried to make this really flexible because people need different things, which is why we have a lot of options. But the main goal and things that you need to know is this successful? Has it worked for people? And so we have some of that data here. And as I put this together today, just on a personal note, I've never been more proud of any information on a slide in my life. So I'm probably going to just geek out a little bit here. And so I apologize for that. This table is a little bit busy, but we're going to walk through it. And so here we go. Okay. So this standard match rate is for the National Match Service, what they're saying at a specific point of the application process, how many of those applicants are expected to match, right? So at the start of the application process, 2,067 people submitted applications, 547 ended up matching, so that's about a 26% match rate. But when we get to the point where interview invitations have been extended, it's about 51% of people who were offered interviews will end up matching. Okay, so that's what these numbers are in this column. Okay, so first up, all our coaching services together, and that excludes the webinars and book clubs because they're not necessarily coaching. So right here, services describes educational videos, small groups, one-on-one coaching, mentorship, all of that. You can see that it's more than double. The people who were involved in GC prep had more than a double chance of matching than people who weren't. Okay. If we look down here at this other data, all of this breaks down this number more. Okay. So with educational videos overall, anyone who had access to those, again, it was about double the chance that they'd match. But even if someone only had access to the educational videos, no other services, nothing one-on-one, nothing small group, they still had a 14% greater chance of matching. If they did the educational videos with other services, whether it was small group or one-on-one, the chance of matching really, really increased here. Okay, it went from about 26% to over 85%. Okay. If we look at all of our coaching services without the educational videos, so only the stuff that's in real time, we see that, again, huge jump, but it went up to 70%. And so with all these numbers, we can kind of conclude that the value of the educational videos is somewhere between 13 to 15% increase in match likelihood at this point. Okay. For those who participated in small groups, again, massive jump here. And I do want to acknowledge the N that we're using for these numbers, for the small groups especially, is relatively small because some people did multiple small groups. Okay. But the low cost of these small group sessions meant that they could have multiple discussions, multiple coaching encounters for the same as the cost of a single one-on-one session. Okay. Also, the number that we're using here, this 26% representing kind of the beginning of the matching process, is probably not fully accurate because some of these small groups happen during interview prep time. But even if we say that this number is somewhere between 26 and 51%, a 90% match rate is still excellent. Okay. If we look at document reviews here, this number just based on the table is just a little bit misleading. So let me explain this. Okay. So of all of the people who received document reviews, 100% of them got interviews. That's what that means. And the match service would say that normally only 51% of those would have gotten interviews. Okay. So this is just showing the effectiveness of any type of document review at earning at least one interview invite. Okay. When it comes to the premium document reviews, which again is with a program director, again, huge jump in ability to match. And even the standard document reviews, which is with a genetic counselor who's not a program director, significant increase in percentage of matching. Looking at mock interviews, premium mock interviews, again with program director, significant increase. And the standard, which is with a regular genetic counselor, is about the same. It's our only metric that is slightly lower, but statistically, these are the same. That chi-square value is almost 0. So what we should take away from this is a couple of things. Okay, notice these are only one session of the mock interviews. And what we saw as we coached people was one mock interview session was good to identify some places where the candidate could improve and help identify some of their strengths, but it was not enough time. That 1 hour was not enough time to develop their interviewing skills more and practice together, right? It just wasn't sufficient. So after that one interview session, if they didn't do any more, they were kind of on their own to apply the changes that we had talked about. However, people who did mock interviews were offered the option to roll it into a limited series, and that's 3 or more sessions, specifically for interview prep. And of those who did that, they managed to go from a 51% general acceptance rate, again, to over 87% acceptance rate. So I personally, in the coaching that I did with these limited series, I saw amazing growth with the people who I coached. Very different amount of confidence, very different amount of analytical skills as they were thinking about their experiences, just very different in their ability to present themselves from start to finish. So this can be a really powerful option for people who want to target a place where they know they've had a weakness. Okay. Finally, down here, this is not necessarily, it probably doesn't have anything to do with us. But we looked at our demographic survey and those who had kind of self-disclosed any underrepresented status to us. And we saw that about 48% of people who were of an underrepresented group that used any type of service through GC Prep did end up matching. Now we're comparing it to 26%, but realistically that 26 assumes an unbiased acceptance, which is false. When we're talking about people of underrepresented groups, there are always going to be biases, whether positive or negative. So we don't really know what the true number is here, but either way, it was certainly increased. And if we look at the national match service data, we saw that about 63% of people who matched were only white Caucasian, and the remaining 38% identified as either non-white, non-Caucasian, or multiracial, which is certainly an improvement in that proportion. But that proportion of race really has nothing to do with the likelihood of matching for people of those groups. And also that number would not be comparable to ours here, because this is many types of underrepresented applicants, not just those who are of an underrepresented race. So all of this data, it's a lot, right? Looking at all of this, we can safely conclude, okay, that candidates who use really any GC Prep services are likely to increase their chances of matching and perform better in their application process. Obviously, we cannot guarantee that everyone who uses our services will match. That we can't guarantee that, right? We have no control over the experiences that you have. We really can take, what you give us. We can help you review your past to kind of pull out and analyze them in a genetic counselor way. But we can't be there with you in the room. We're not the ones doing the interviews. We have no say with the actual programs about who should be accepted or not. That would be a conflict of interest. But certainly, people who participated in GC Prep services saw a significant increase in the likelihood that they'd match. So, I'm not going to read all of this, but it's just a couple of testimonials you can read later. But these are two individuals that I personally coached, and they mean a lot to me now. The first one here, it was their third time applying, and their first two times they didn't even get any interviews. And so this was a very stressful process for them. And so we worked together. We did a limited series. They had, I think, 4 or 5 sessions, and they did match and are able to start their life as a genetic counselor. And that was a very rewarding experience for both me and them. The second one here, again, second time applying, they were a mature student who was changing their careers. And again, we did a limited series, about 4 sessions, I believe. And it was night and day. The first session or the last session, they really, really grew, and they matched at their top choice this year. So final items, just some upcoming events. If you want to get involved, there are some upcoming small groups. There's one tomorrow, which is our first workshop for reapplicants on moving forward. Okay. There's one on the 4th of May. So networking with your schools of interest. So how to do that. When you're writing those emails, hey, tell me, give me feedback, please. How do you do that tactfully, right? How do you, and then how do you make that contact go beyond the basics so that's more meaningful? We have a session on the 11th. It's the second workshop for reapplicants on building your confidence. There's one at the 1st of June for goal setting in your application process. And then there's one on the 8th of June as well, which is navigating burnout. Now, this one is, you know, typically aimed at current students and new GCs, but reapplicants are welcome because you've been through a lot this last year and now you're doing it all again. So there's a very real sense of burnout that can come with that. So they'll discuss some coping strategies that people can use if you're reapplying. Okay. The next book club is on the 22nd of June. With the book is Violinist Thumb, and Jessa will be hosting that book club. And that book is really a collection of short stories and experiences of how different genetic disorders have affected families. So if you don't read the whole thing, that's okay. It can be, you can read as much or as little of it as you want, and it's a good opportunity to reflect on patient experiences. If you're interested in services, you can use a discount code reapplicant10 to get $10 off anything on the website. And that will be good till the end of June, one per person. Okay. So I know that applying to grad school is very expensive. And believe me, we're not trying to make that financial burden any larger, but we do want to help you with your next attempt, having it be successful. And for all the time and the money and the stress that you'll put into it, we want to help you get that seat that you really want. So our data says that we can improve that, we can help you. But if you have any concerns about the financial burden, the cost, certainly let me know, because we want to make this as accessible as possible within our current limitations. And then in the future, hopefully that 501c charitable organization piece will be able to expand it even further. Okay. So at this point, we're done. And I know we're a little bit over. So thank you to those who are staying. So I'll turn it over to Jessa to kind of review any questions. Does anybody have any questions?
So just to kind of start, there were just two that had been in the chat. The first one was just kind of logistics that other people might want to hear again anyway, is where exactly will the video be posted, and then, or of this recording? And then something that I kind of thought is, would it be accessible for us to just email it out in some way to the individuals who showed up tonight as easier access?
Yeah, so the file will be too large to fit in an email. So there's that limitation, but it'll just be available on the front page of the website. Right now, there's the interview prep webinar is posted there. That'll move. We'll put this one up, and it'll be right there. There will not be a fee to watch it. So just hop on the website and view it.
And so do you know any stats on the percentage of reapplicants versus new applicants in a cycle by chance?
Good question. So not for this year yet. But for 2020, I have data from there. And that data came more from like the Association of Genetic Counseling Program Directors rather than the match service themselves. But people who were first-time applicants, if they got an interview, their acceptance rate was 53-ish% at that point. And for people who were second or third time applicants, it did go up. It was more like 60. Now that number is a couple years old. And we don't have this year's number yet, but it does increase for second, third time applicants, but it is not like, it's not a huge change stats wise.
Okay, and then do you anticipate interviews for GC programs will continue via Zoom, or do you think there's discussion of going back in person? I think, just from my own understanding from individuals I've coached, is that it's been, some groups are doing actually a bit of both, and some are also inviting you to still go visit, whether that's under the guise of like partial interview status or just, hey, come visit our campus, see if it's right for you type of thing. I don't know, Michaela, do you?
It's TBD. I think that there are so many programs who do things in such different ways that we'll probably end up seeing both. I know with my program, we all did in person, but they would do their international candidates by Zoom. And now, of course, all programs are very comfortable with doing Zoom. So I think there will be some programs who just totally stick with the virtual thing because they've done it the last couple of years. They're used to it. They don't want to cause financial burden of people having to travel. And then there will be other schools who are like, nope, in person's better. It's easier to get a sense of a person, just see how they are in real life. So we wanted and make sure they like the campus. So, we're going to switch back. So I think it's probably going to be up in the air for at least the next couple of years. And my guess is that you'll see programs doing different things.
And then there's a question about the discount code. Will it still apply if we'd like to watch this later once the recording is posted? Which I think the answer to that I can type to is that it's good till June.
The end of June. Yeah, last day of June is when that discount code will expire. So you can use that $10 on anything on the website until the last day of June. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you everyone so much for coming. Again, let us know if there's anything that you need specifically, or if you have a question that you're not comfortable putting in the chat, go ahead and email support@GC Prep LLC, and we're happy to respond to you one-on-one. If there's any concerns you have, just let us know, and we can definitely take care of that. Okay, but thank you guys so much, and let us know if you need any additional help moving forward. Take care.